Epilogue. Aramis flees through the forest, severely wounded with 3 bullets in his back, carrying his unconscious, battered sister Irene in his arms. He reflects on his numb existence built on pain, addiction, and emotional detachment, knowing that love, especially for family, has become his greatest vulnerability. After being captured and tortured by Oberon's men, Aramis had endured 2 days of forced helplessness made to watch Irene suffer. Her pleas for death finally broke him, and he bargained her life for a kingdom. Now, barely alive, he stumbles toward a hidden cabin in the woods where Orpheus waits. Aramis commands him to save Irene first, uncertain if she'll survive. He vows vengeance, stating, "In the morning, we bury them all." As he collapses under the moonlight, he hears its whispered warning, reminding him of Rihanna, the silver-haired girl he hasn't betrayed but knows is in danger. The cost of love has become his greatest burden. In Chapter 1, Neera endures the aftermath of her binding bargain with Orion Callistar, the Herald of Death. Their kiss seals the ritual, linking their souls through blood and magic. Pain ignites through Neera's body as Orion's mark appears on her wrist, a burning red vine identical to his. When she demands to know what he's done, Orion warns her that the bond is unbreakable. They are now tied by the magic of the blood oath. Overwhelmed by the connection, Neera's body begins to weaken while Orion fights the pull of his own bloodlust. He warns her not to run, confessing that if she does, he'll be forced to chase and catch her. Despite her fear, Neera senses she can still trust him not to let her fall. Before she can speak again, a violent disturbance shakes the forest. Winds, wings, and chaos closing in, marking the beginning of something far greater than their bargain. In Chapter 2, Neera dreams of her early encounters with Orion in the ether before she ever knew his true identity. Back then, he was only her mysterious ether man, a shadowed presence she met between worlds. Their meetings were filled with laughter, teasing, and unspoken longing. Through their connection, Orion vowed that no matter how many lifetimes passed or how far apart they were in the cosmos, they would always find each other again. He would be her last love, and she would be his. Though Neera was human then, yearning for real, immediate love, Orion spoke of timeless devotion that transcended mortality. Afraid of forever and desperate for the present, Neera questioned what would happen if she died before they met in the flesh. Orion's haunting promise echoed through her dream. Even in death, he would still claim her, foreshadowing the eternal bond their fates had already begun to weave. In Chapter 3, Orion watches over Neera as she recovers from the magical exhaustion caused by releasing her divine power. He tends to her with healing herbs, but she remains feverish and suspicious, accusing him of hiding the truth. After she dismisses him in anger, Orion speaks with Talia, ensuring Neera's comfort, and grapples with how unprepared he feels to care for her. News arrives of a chimera attack that killed half a border troop, signaling war. At the castle, Orion confronts King Ascian and Rieka over their secretive deal with Zephyr Rafandra. Ascian reveals that Neera's heartbreak was orchestrated to trigger her power, and that Orion's role is part of a larger destiny. Furious, Orion rejects fate and storms out, haunted by visions of past lives with Neera. Reflecting on his trauma and resilience, he invokes his inner fire to numb the emotional pain and chooses to drown his memories for the night. In Chapter 4, Zephyr returns to Chethra through a portal, embracing his rebirth and shedding past identities. He heads for the old Resistance hideout, now in disrepair, only to find Orpheus and Aramis already there. Aramis, long thought dead, is revealed to be alive but broken, having betrayed the Resistance under duress to protect his secret half-sister Irene. Zephyr brutally assaults Aramis before discovering the girl and realizing she is Aramis's sister, long hidden from Oberon. The confrontation ends with raw confessions as Aramis reveals his torture and regrets nothing. Despite the betrayal, Zephyr recognizes Aramis's enduring pain and loyalty. As tensions ease, Zephyr shares his plan: to turn the gangsters of Black Pit against Oberon by demonstrating power, not ideals. His magic, now stronger after a near-catastrophic surge, will be the weapon. With Chethra descending into chaos, Zephyr prepares to rally the city by force and burn down the old world to build a new one. In Chapter 5, Orpheus tends to Irene's injuries in the Resistance's cabin, witnessing the full extent of her torture. Though Irene stubbornly resists help, he insists on cleaning and dressing her infected knee, which was sawed with iron. Their conversation is tense, laced with bitterness, vulnerability, and unspoken affection. Orpheus reflects on his past as a slave and his priest father's unwavering faith, even unto death, and uses that to refute Irene's guilt and belief she's being punished. Despite Irene's barbed words, Orpheus stays by her side, slowly breaking through her pride. They share a moment of tenderness as he reassures her that she is not ugly or sinful. As their closeness builds, both struggle with their desires and emotional scars. The chapter ends with Orpheus preparing for the next phase of their plan, knowing he must once again embrace death and violence to serve the city, even as his father's ghost lingers in his conscience. In Chapter 6, Rihanna disguises herself as a boy and escapes through the silent, mist-covered streets of Chethra with Elijah. With bounties on both their heads, hers set at 500,000 gold marks due to her suspected link to the Etherwalker, they retreat to Elijah's abandoned Black Pit apartment. As the city descends into chaos and betrayal, they're stopped by Constabulary Officer Marcus, who turns out to be colluding with Loki's men. Ambushed by Marcus, Cohen, and Aaron, Rihanna kills Cohen in brutal self-defense, and Elijah savagely eliminates Aaron and Marcus, showing no mercy. They flee to the apartment and board it shut, catching their breath and tending wounds. There, amid exhaustion and fear, Rihanna uses seduction to maintain emotional distance, while Elijah hints at deeper feelings. Their dynamic teeters between survival and self-destruction, as Rihanna offers herself physically, not out of love, but as repayment, and Elijah accepts, unable to admit the hollow truth between them. In Chapter 7, Neera awakens after 2 days of unconsciousness, still grappling with her binding to Orion and the overwhelming magic it awakened. She and Orion travel to the city of Arcelia to meet the High Priestess, who may help Neera understand her ether-walking powers. As they walk through the picturesque, magic-infused city, Neera probes Orion with teasing banter, trying to unlock his guarded nature. She reveals bits of her past in Chethra, including her work as a thief, dust dealer, and fortune teller, while subtly stealing coins from him to prove her skill. Their rapport deepens through flirtation and tension, but it's interrupted when locals recognize Neera as a witch and Orion as a bastard. Neera learns Orion was once set on fire by citizens who feared him. Despite being commander and protector, Orion is loathed due to his demonic bloodline. Neera sees the cruel sameness between Arcelia and Chethra, and starts to fear falling for him. In Chapter 8, Neera and Orion visit the temple in Arcelia, a majestic sanctuary of knowledge overseen by High Priestess Ismene. While Neera marvels at the temple's vast archives and magic-infused architecture, she begins her ether-walking training. Ismene, who once raised Orion like a son, explains the temple's role and the significance of knowledge over power. She also shares the history behind the war with the Heralds, revealing that Orion is the son of Drastus, a demon king killed during his birth, and that his uncle Silas now rules Cardalin. Neera learns about the Erinyes, vengeance demons linked to her late father, and begins to formulate a bold plan involving Oberon Rafandra's nightmares. She discovers that the lunar realm is ahead of Chethra in time and suspects Oberon's madness might be orchestrated. With her powers awakening and political truths unraveling, Neera resolves to weaponize her ether-walking to take him down. In Chapter 9, Aramis and Orpheus flee Black Pit after Aramis brutally murders 2 soldiers who had tortured his sister. Though Orpheus wanted them alive, Aramis justifies their deaths, claiming vengeance. They navigate the misty canals with 2 unconscious soldiers as cargo, planning to bury them alive with help from Themos, who makes iron caskets. However, they are pursued by constabulary forces, forcing them to shoot the soldiers, ditch the boat, and escape into the city. Aramis leads Orpheus to a brothel run by Cassia, where they seek temporary refuge. Though wary, Cassia allows them to wash and regroup. Inside, Aramis reflects on his pain, his lack of remorse, and his motivation to find Rihanna to help Neera and honor Zephyr's promise. Tension brews between the 2 men as Aramis taunts Orpheus over Irene, hinting at Orpheus's guilt and emotional turmoil. Despite their differences, both remain bound to the mission, and to their ghosts. In Chapter 10, Orion brings Neera home from the temple, promising her safety and freedom. She's glowing with ether, eager to read, and visibly comforted by the books he prepared for her. Despite their tense history, they share moments of warmth and banter. Their magical teleportation through Sundust is intimate, stirring memories of past lives where they'd met the same way. At Orion's house, Neera thanks him, prompting a flood of guilt as he reflects on his role in her past pain. When she questions his lineage and refusal to claim his throne, Orion reveals the futility and danger of such a legacy. Later, a shadow, tied to his bloodline, taunts him about his coldness toward Nira. Their late-night interaction escalates as Nira pushes him for truth about their bond and the Shadow Man. Emotion and desire clash with withheld confessions, and Orion deflects with sarcasm. Nira leaves, unresolved tension burning between them. In Chapter 11, Nira enters the kitchen at dawn and discovers Orion's black wings, awestruck by their beauty and power. They share a surprisingly tender moment as he allows her to touch them, revealing the biological mechanics behind their emergence. The intimate moment shifts when he offers her breakfast and encourages her to nourish herself, gently coaxing her to accept comfort and care she's long denied. Afterward, Orion flies her to the rooftop gymnasium, the thrilling flight awakening Nira's ether, making her glow from the magic surge. Their training begins with weaponry, where she's introduced to an adamant Kopi sword meant to fight demons like Orion. Though she's eager, Orion insists she first master her body. Their banter leads Nira to reveal her mission, fueled by magic and deception. Their dynamic deepens as trust, chemistry, and conflicting desires continue to build beneath their sparring. The chapter ends with her ready to begin serious training. In Chapter 12, Aramis tracks Elijah Gladys through the streets of Blackpit, suspecting he's hiding Rihanna Delara. After tailing him to a concealed apartment, Aramis confirms Rihanna's presence and climbs to her window. Rihanna, furious and armed, confronts him, demanding Nira's whereabouts. Aramis insists Nira is safe and that he's come to escort Rihanna to safety per Zephyr's promise. Their exchange is laced with tension, old resentment, and mutual manipulation. Aramis uses emotional magic to disarm her and momentarily break through her defenses, exposing her buried pain. Though Rihanna regains control and threatens him with his own gun, Aramis reminds her that he's her only link to Nira. Before leaving, he gives her a pixie bottle that will summon him if she changes her mind. When she asks the price, he requests a kiss, mirroring a past exchange. As he departs, Aramis senses approaching catastrophe. Zephyr Rafandra has arrived in Chethra. In Chapter 13, Rihanna is left emotionally shattered after Aramis departs. Though she resents his beauty, magic, and the vulnerability he stirs in her, she cannot deny how deeply he affects her, more than Elijah ever has. She reflects bitterly on her past, particularly her naive trust in Kiran when she was 17 and first arrived in Chethra, which led her to sign an indenture she now regrets. Overwhelmed, Rihanna breaks down in tears, wrestling with guilt and shame. Her grief is interrupted by a sudden catastrophe unfolding outside, an earthquake-like tremor followed by a violent explosion that sends debris flying and chaos erupting across the city. As the storm intensifies and destruction spreads, Rihanna watches in horror, sensing something unnatural in the devastation. The chapter ends with her stunned realization that something truly monstrous is happening. The skies themselves seem to be smiling. In Chapter 14, Zephyr enters the city of Chethra cloaked in mist, using the wind not as a servant but an ally. As he moves unseen through the city, he unleashes a powerful windstorm that targets Adamandia, the district of the elite. The destruction is swift and focused, culminating in the complete demolition of the townhouse belonging to Loki Xander, a powerful gangster known as the King of the Agora. The building is torn apart brick by brick as terrified servants and Loki's wife barely escape with their lives. After the destruction, Zephyr casually flips through coins in his pocket and tosses one bearing his own image onto the ruined threshold, a symbolic gesture marking his presence and authority. Then, without being seen, he disappears into the chaos he created, leaving the city reeling and the people screaming in panic. His arrival signals a storm of change and confrontation. In Chapter 15, Nira trains rigorously with Commander Orion Kalistar, strengthening her combat and magical ether-walking abilities. Orion pushes her physically and emotionally to prepare her for danger, especially her mission involving Oberon. Their intense training in the forest leads to a moment of unexpected closeness and mutual vulnerability. Nira begins to see Orion differently, sensing the pain and rejection he hides. Their bond deepens, but both struggle with trust and emotional scars. Just as their conversation turns personal, an ominous howl signals danger. Chimeras attack, monstrous beasts with adamant claws. Orion orders Nira to escape through a portal, but she hesitates, unwilling to leave him. Ultimately, he forces her through it after a brutal and heroic battle. The chapter ends with Nira witnessing Orion slaying the beast before the portal swallows her, leaving behind a battlefield drenched in blood and shadow. The stakes are now higher, and their connection more fragile. In Chapter 16, Nera confronts the overwhelming truth that Orion Callistar is not a fairy or demon, but a god. After witnessing him unleash a shadow army and plunge the world into darkness during battle, she reels from fear and awe. Back at the house, still shaken, she hides in her room until Orion storms in, bloodied and desperate to check if she's hurt. His rage turns to anguish as he confesses his fear of losing her again, hinting at past ether encounters. Despite her confusion, Nera tends to his wounds, offering tenderness that shakes him more deeply than battle. Their emotional intimacy escalates as Orion, vulnerable and broken, collapses against her, asking forgiveness for his lies and failures. Before answering her plea for truth about their connection and the ether, he kisses her heart and vanishes into shadow, leaving behind only an outline, proof of his presence and the magnitude of their bond. In Chapter 17, Orion recalls the night he first bargained with the Shadow Man as a desperate 12-year-old offering blood and pleading to become a normal fairy. The Dark God rejected his innocence and instead offered the path of fear and power. Orion embraced it, beginning the long road that shaped him into a weapon. Years later, haunted by grief over losing Nera in past lives, he drowns his dread in drink and confides in Andreas, then forces him to take his sword, preparing for a possible future where he'll need to be killed. When two herald teenagers are caught past the borders, Orion prepares for war but finds they were only lost. Moved by their youth, he spares them and secretly escorts them out. Even when the boy, Atlas, vows hate and defiance, Orion sees a reflection of himself in Atlas, recognizing the futility and tragedy of raising boys into soldiers only to destroy them. In Chapter 18, Irene listens quietly as Aramis, Zephyr, and Orpheus strategize how to respond to Loki Xander's invitation. Though weakened and haunted by guilt over lives lost for her survival, she volunteers to use her telepathy during the meeting to read Loki's thoughts and ensure he honors any deal. Despite Orpheus's concern for her recovery, she insists on her capability and proves her magic still works by briefly breaking through his mental shields. Tension erupts when Zephyr demonstrates his expanding magical power by nearly suffocating the others, revealing he may be channeling divine force. Irene offers insight into Xander's manipulative psychology, advising how best to negotiate with him. In a quiet moment alone with Orpheus, she thanks him for rescuing her from Aphrodisia and reassures him that he's a good man. Though she feels powerless now, she asks to reclaim control by facing danger herself, determined to be more than a victim. In Chapter 19, Zephyr leads a tense negotiation with Loki Xander, the powerful gang lord of Chethra. Though stripped of weapons upon entering, Zephyr and his allies, Irene, Aramis, and Orpheus, quickly dominate the room with their magic and menace. When one of Loki's thugs insults Irene, Aramis and Orpheus violently retaliate, asserting their power and sending a clear message. Zephyr then uses his suffocating wind magic to force Loki's men to their knees, emphasizing the stakes. The real purpose of their visit is revealed. Zephyr demands Loki deceive the current king by feeding him false information, allowing Zephyr's group to seize the Raphandran palace. In exchange, Zephyr offers protection, future profits, and eventual discussions about weapons trade. Irene confirms through telepathy that Loki is swayed. They agree. Zephyr will no longer be hunted, and Rihanna's safety is requested, though Loki warns she's endangered by Elijah's rebellion. Zephyr concludes with a chilling ultimatum: kill them all. In Chapter 20, Orion finds Nera studying late into the night, still angry with him. Attempting to bridge the rift between them, he presents her with a green dress and a gold and emerald flower crown for the upcoming celebration of the hunt. He asks her to attend with him, admitting his desire to create a tender, shared memory while he still has time. Their exchange is layered with tension, vulnerability, and a growing mutual affection. The next day, they join the festival in disguise, mingling with the Arcelian crowds. Nera dances joyfully while Orion reflects on his deepening feelings for her and his looming fate. Later, he confides in his friend Andreas, expressing his wish to live fully before death claims him. As the celebration continues, Orion finally admits to himself that he truly loves Nera, not because of their past lives, but for who she is now. They end the night holding each other, suspended in peace. In Chapter 21, the royal hunt begins, but Nera pulls Orion away from the festivities to play a game of their own. She dares him into a private chase. If he catches her, he gets her. If she wins, he owes her a truth. Their pursuit through the forest is charged with flirtation, shadows, and unspoken emotion. Orion uses his wings to catch her mid-run, and their tension ignites into a deeply sensual moment filled with teasing shadows and vulnerability. But as desire builds, Orion abruptly stops, claiming getting close will only end in pain. Nera, heartbroken, pleads for honesty and finally confesses everything, her past mistakes, guilt, and how his love changed her. She asks if he can love her even at her worst. Orion, emotional and shaken, admits he wants her just as she is, but still refuses to act on his desire without truth. Instead, he reminds her she bargained for freedom, and heartbreakingly lets her go. In Chapter 22, Rihanna reflects on her childhood memories of shadows and her father's poetic teachings about their need for light. Trapped in a rain-drenched apartment with Elijah, tension rises as he believes someone is following him. Their argument is cut short when armed men storm in and shoot Elijah. He dies instantly, shattering Rihanna's world. In a violent, grief-stricken frenzy, she screams and fights off her captors until they subdue her. One of the attackers attempts to assault her, citing Kieran as justification. But Rihanna ascends, unlocking a new level of her powers. Shadows erupt from her body, attacking and maiming the intruders. As the chaos unfolds, a final shot rings out. Rihanna is hit twice and collapses, but even as her body falls, her shadows continue to fight. In this moment of transformation, Rihanna realizes her father was wrong. Shadows do not need the light, they thrive in darkness. In Chapter 23, Rihanna lies bleeding from 2 gunshot wounds, drifting between life and death. As she crawls through her own blood, she battles internally between surrendering to death, mourning Elijah, or continuing to fight. Despite the agony and fading strength, the survivor within her refuses to yield. The bullets lodged near her heart threaten to end her, but she pushes herself forward, determined not to die helplessly. She drags her body across the floor toward a hidden pixie bottle beneath the bed, her only remaining chance at survival. With her last reserves of strength, Rihanna smashes the vial in her hand, calling out a single desperate name: Aramis. In Chapter 24, Aramis reflects on the chaos following alliances with Loki and Lady Helena. Holed up in the Mirage penthouse, the group plans the palace infiltration, but tensions rise, especially due to Zephyr's erratic behavior and Aramis's stardust addiction. As Aramis grapples with guilt and detachment, a messenger pixie arrives with news that sends him running. He finds Rihanna's apartment soaked in blood, body parts scattered, and Rihanna nearly dead, having ascended in self-defense. Bullet wounds laced with iron prevent Aramis from healing her fully, but he manages to carry her out, keeping her conscious with questions about her dream life. Rihanna, fighting death, reveals her wish to open a dress shop in Amaris and confesses the childhood trauma that drove her away, her father's murder and her mother's final act of protection. Aramis rows her through the canals, overwhelmed by her pain and his own helplessness, promising to take her home if she survives. In Chapter 25, Aramis tends to Rihanna at the Mirage after healing her physical injuries from the shooting, but finds her emotionally unresponsive and unreachable by magic. Her apathy unsettles him more than her pain ever did. When he finally provokes her into reacting, Rihanna initiates a furious kiss and offers herself to him in what she frames as repaying her debt for the pixie vial. Aramis pulls away, refusing to take advantage, and the two spiral into a volatile argument about power, pain, and trust. Rihanna challenges his motives, while Aramis struggles with his inability to feel her emotions, something deeply unusual for him. Their conversation reveals her deep trauma and fear of being broken by him. When she realizes they're in Loki's Mirage, she panics and tries to escape through the window. Aramis restrains her, and Orpheus is forced to magically subdue her. Aramis wishes she could dream of peace instead of terror. In Chapter 26, Nera struggles to open a portal to the immortal realms while training with Ismene in the temple, frustrated by their slow progress and worried about the war in the solar realm. Ismene suggests the summoning might be more ritualistic, but Nera remains tense, revealing her plans to kill Oberon and use the Shadow Man as leverage, despite suspecting ulterior motives. Ismene urges her to take a break, leading them to a lively tavern where they share drinks and laughter. Nera's emotions spiral as Orion arrives and confronts her drunken state. They argue, Nera accusing him of rejection, Orion confessing his love and fear of losing her. Overwhelmed and physically ill, Nera tries and fails to open a portal to Rihanna. Orion comforts her and flies her home, where she drifts into unconsciousness, haunted by the feeling that this connection between them and her struggles with magic have happened before. In Chapter 27, Orion reflects on the consequences of a soul bond that spans lifetimes. After carrying a drunken and heartbroken Nera home, he watches over her and confesses his love when she awakens. Pressed for answers, he reveals their cyclical history as soulmates, reliving love and loss across time. Orion admits he made a bargain with the Shadow Man Hadis to find Nera, offering an unspecified favor in return, believing she was in danger. But Nera connects the dots. The fate manipulated Zephyr's love for her to deliver her to Orion, proving the bargain's consequences were far-reaching and unethical. Though Orion pleads ignorance of the full scope, he vows to protect her and sacrifice himself if needed. When he says he'll leave once the favor is claimed, Nera breaks, declaring her love. Overwhelmed, she escapes, summoning a portal and vanishing, leaving Orion devastated and alone in the ruins of their fragile happiness. In Chapter 28, Nera reels from Orion's confession that they are soulmates bound across lifetimes and by his bargain with the Shadow Man. Though furious and heartbroken, she admits that her love for him eclipses her anger. Determined to save him, she races to the temple to find Ismene and questions her about the ancient portal spell. Nera theorizes that the key to entering the Shadow Realm is not visualization or conjuring, but triggering it through sacrifice. Ignoring Ismene's pleas to wait and prepare, Nera decides to act immediately, realizing that Orion's bargain with Hadis has tied his fate to hers. She drives a hairpin into her palm, using her blood as payment to open the portal. Summoning darkness through pain and intent, she forces a gateway into the Shadow Realm, ready to face whatever lies beyond to save Orion, no matter the cost. In Chapter 29, Nera enters the Shadow Realm through a blood-triggered portal, arriving in a skyless, abyssal world that drains her ether and challenges her resolve. Navigating the darkness, she follows a river and encounters a mysterious young girl, revealed to be a psychopomp guarding a ferry. The girl demands payment to cross, and Nera offers an emerald flower Orion once gifted her, symbolizing their bond. Satisfied, the girl ferries Nera across the Acheron River, which is filled with the souls of those who tried and failed to pass. Along the journey, the girl shares chilling insights about death, eternal lovers turned to river snakes, and the underworld's mechanisms. Upon reaching the shore, she warns Nera to be careful with the Master, who is fiercely protected by the Fate. Nera promises to return if she survives her mission. As the boat vanishes behind her, she steels herself to face what lies deeper in the Shadow Realm. In Chapter 30, Nera is ambushed by shadowy creatures in the Shadow Realm, but allows herself to be captured, knowing they'll take her to Hadis. She's dragged into his throne room, where corpses, including her father's, are grotesquely impaled. Undeterred, Nera confronts Hadis, demanding he release Orion from his soul-binding bargain and cease making deals in the ether. Hadis reveals Orion sold his soul for her, intending to weaponize him as a demon wielding shadows. To intimidate her, Hades unleashes a creature identical to Orion, who brutally attacks Nera until she wounds it with an ether blade. Regaining control, she bluffs her ability to shield the ether realm, threatening to cut Hadis off from it. She proposes a non-magical deal. Orion won't kill or be harmed under Hadis' command, and Hadis must bargain fairly in the ether. Intrigued, Hadis agrees. The chapter ends with Nera sealing the deal and pivoting to her next goal, retribution. In Chapter 31, Irene awakens from a nightmare to find Orpheus calming her down after she unknowingly injured herself. Though he tries to pull away, she asks him to stay. The tension between them builds as they confront the desire and guilt rooted in their past traumas. Despite her lingering shame from Aphrodisia and his emotional detachment, they connect deeply. Orpheus allows a shared illusion of intimacy, where Irene sees what it might be like to be truly wanted. But she ultimately rejects the illusion, asking for honesty. They talk about Zephyr's plans to reshape the realm through extreme means, and Irene expresses concern over his growing ruthlessness. Orpheus comforts her, promising a peaceful future together in Findara when the war is over. The chapter ends with a moment of hope, as Irene drifts into a dream of sunflowers and dancing, holding on to the vision of a better life beyond the violence. In Chapter 32, Zephyr prepares to travel through a portal to meet Nera and push forward his revolutionary plans. As he, Aramis and Orpheus banter, tensions surface, especially with Irene, who distrusts Zephyr's growing ruthlessness. Despite her disapproval, Zephyr remains committed to his mission, believing that sacrifice is necessary for systemic change. He reflects on Chethra's bloody demands, arguing that a bloodless revolution is impossible in a world resistant to change. Orpheus forces Zephyr to take a gun for protection, and Aramis adds his own sardonic warnings. Zephyr acknowledges that while heartbreak isn't the plan, Neera's rejection is a risk, though holding Rihanna's leverage gives him an upper hand. They finalize strategy. Loki will send 5 rough-looking men to Amares with a messenger pixie to hint at Zephyr's reappearance. Irene critiques his willingness to harm others, but Zephyr dismisses the idea of peace, revealing how far he's willing to go for what he believes is right. In Chapter 33, Orion struggles with the sudden separation from Neera after she leaves the Shadow Realm, feeling stranded and powerless. He desperately searches the temple for a way to reach her, ignoring Ismeni's warnings, believing it is his fault she undertook the journey. A portal suddenly opens and Neera emerges unharmed, her hair disheveled but her body intact. Orion rushes to her, concerned for her safety, and discovers a thin stream of blood from her nose, which she casually dismisses, demonstrating her feral confidence. He demands to know if she made a bargain with Hades, fearing the Shadow Man's manipulations. Neera taunts Orion, revealing her control over the situation and testing his restraint. Despite his desire to act and claim her, Orion restrains himself as shadows surround them. Before they can fully confront the matter, someone interrupts. Draco arrives with a message from the castle. Prince Zephyr of the Solar Realm requests Neera's presence, forcing Orion and Neera to shift focus. In Chapter 34, Neera confronts Zephyr Rafandra at Ashian's study in the castle. She observes his altered demeanor and new gangster-style attire, noting his lethal composure and strength. Tension escalates as Zephyr mocks her and Orion, prompting Orion to intervene, immobilizing Zephyr and asserting authority. Zephyr complies, teasing Neera, but confirms that Rihanna is safe and under Aramis' protection. He explains his past manipulations, admitting he used the Fates' interference to push Neera toward power and readiness. Neera realizes Zephyr orchestrated events to ensure she developed her abilities to confront Oberon effectively. The conversation shifts to planning their next move. Zephyr confirms Loki's men are ready to act, securing Rihanna's safety. Zephyr also outlines his vision for Chethra, intending to abolish Fae hierarchies and create equality. Neera agrees to coordinate her strategy with him, emphasizing the need for skill, ruthlessness, and acceptance of the consequences of their actions. The stage is set for their combined mission against Oberon. In Chapter 35, Orion retreats to the cold gray-stone cellar beneath the castle's kitchen, a place of childhood refuge. Ascian follows him, sits beside him, and reassures him, explaining that he kept his distance from Neera to allow her to adjust to this life without feeling overwhelmed. Ascian reflects on his failures as a father figure and acknowledges Orion's extraordinary power, which has grown since reuniting with his soulmate. Orion apologizes for missteps and misjudgments, expressing frustration over his inability to fit within the kingdom. Ascian encourages him, offering his army and support to challenge their uncle and claim the throne, emphasizing Orion's potential as a king. Orion, however, seeks unity rather than unnecessary conflict, desiring Ascian's guidance to influence both their peoples. Neera enters the cellar, bringing warmth and color to Orion's world. Ascian leaves them alone, allowing Orion and Neera an intimate, unguarded moment, highlighting their deep bond and the unspoken tension between desire, trust, and mutual understanding. In Chapter 36, Neera and Orion's reunion intensifies both emotionally and physically. Neera clarifies she did not make a bargain with the Shadow Man, though she struck a deal that alleviates part of Orion's previous bargain, promising mutual benefit. The two share a deeply intimate moment in the cellar, affirming their devotion and willingness to face any trials for each other. Their physical connection mirrors their emotional bond, with their kiss and touch acting as a conduit for shared longing, desire, and reaffirmation of love. Orion reassures Neera of her forgiveness and professes his unyielding love, vowing to honor and pleasure her repeatedly. Talia's brief interruption is quickly managed by Orion, who ensures her departure to maintain privacy. The chapter closes with the pair embracing fully in Orion's bedroom, uniting in body and soul, and committing themselves entirely to one another. Their connection underscores the unbreakable strength of their bond, and their love becomes the driving force for all future actions. In Chapter 37, Orion and Neera awaken together in the atrium after their intense night, sharing tender and intimate moments that reaffirm their bond. Neera informs Orion she must leave to execute the plan with Zephyr, who is orchestrating a delicate operation to trick the Chethran court and avoid a royalist revolution. Despite their imminent separation, they reaffirm their love, promising to meet nightly in the ether and trust each other. Orion expresses his desire to create his own legacy as the Herald of Death, separate from his father's, and vows to honor Neera and the second chance she bought him in the Shadow Realm. They prepare for her departure to Chethra, engaging in small, intimate acts, brushing hair, discussing past lives, and recalling memories of prior encounters across incarnations, which deepen their emotional connection. Both acknowledge the risks and the possibility this may be their final chance together, balancing hope with the looming uncertainty of fate. In Chapter 38, Rihanna is confined in a luxurious room struggling with intense anger over past deaths, including Elijah Gladys, and the presence of Kieran, while contending with her newly ascended powers and ravenous shadows. Aramis Aldeas persistently attempts to coax her into eating, testing her emotional limits and confronting her about her trauma. Rihanna lashes out physically and verbally, expressing her frustration at being brought into the situation and feeling powerless against Loki and his alliances. Aramis admits to manipulating events to protect her and uphold Zephyr's promises, revealing his strategic orchestration of accidents to neutralize threats like Loki's men. Despite Rihanna's defiance, the confrontation ends without violence, and she begins to process the intensity of her feelings and the manipulations around her. Neera then arrives unexpectedly, embracing Rihanna and providing relief and comfort, reinforcing their bond and offering support, highlighting the importance of mutual care and emotional resilience amidst the chaos. In Chapter 39, a storm rages over the Mirage penthouse as Neera convenes with Rihanna, Zephyr, Orpheus, Aramis, and Irene to finalize the plan against Oberon Rafandra. Zephyr explains that Fae succession law requires the heir not to commit the killing himself, so Neera must handle Oberon. She clarifies that Oberon is cursed by her father, not mad, and that his mother, Titania, manipulated events to weaken him and control the throne. The group devises a strategy. Orpheus and Loki's men will infiltrate the palace while Zephyr and Neera confront Oberon, ensuring minimal bloodshed and that Zephyr remains the sole Rafandra heir. They also plan to neutralize Titania and Nox afterward. Concerns about the reliability of Loki's thugs and portal protections are raised. Rihanna insists the team stays alert, noting their extraordinary abilities could change the realm. Preparations are made to relocate to Elijah's townhouse until Zephyr secures his position. Neera departs to make a critical bargain with a nightmare. In Chapter 40, Orpheus and Irene share a quiet, intimate moment in her bedroom before the upcoming mission. Irene asks if Neera has returned. Orpheus confirms she has not. They discuss readiness for the palace infiltration, with Orpheus asserting his knowledge of the layout. Before departing, Orpheus gives Irene a small pendant that belonged to his father, a talisman he was allowed to keep when sold, as a token of protection and remembrance. Irene seeks reassurance, asking for a hug, and Orpheus embraces her, feeling the conflicting emotions of desire and apprehension. She urges him to promise to return, but Orpheus cannot make such a vow, explaining he cannot foresee what tomorrow holds. Instead, he expresses that she is both the best and worst thing that has happened to him. The best for inspiring hope and the worst for evoking desires he may never fulfill. They share a brief, tender moment of connection before preparing for the mission. In Chapter 41, Neera enters the dreamlands of the Ether, a vast white valley filled with nightmares, ghostly entities with unseen eyes and hissing voices. Though once terrifying, these beings recognize her as their master. Armed with ether and adamant weapons, Neera prepares for battle but quickly realizes she doesn't need to fight. The nightmares approach her in reverence, surrounding her with loyalty. One massive ancient nightmare addresses her as master, confirming her dominion over them. Accepting this newfound power, Neera commands them to serve her by haunting a man who will soon enter the Shadow Realm. Confident and resolute, she embraces her godlike authority, turning the forces of terror themselves into her allies. This marks Neera's full acceptance of her divine identity and her readiness to wield nightmare and ether alike in the battles ahead. In Chapter 42, Orpheus prepares Irene for the upcoming mission against Oberon's forces. He reassures her of his knowledge of the palace, gives her a silver pendant inherited from his father as a protective talisman, and embraces her as they share a moment of closeness. Irene requests his promise to return safely, but he admits he cannot guarantee the future. He expresses his admiration for her, acknowledging both the inspiration she provides and the impossible desires she evokes. They share an intimate, grounding moment, allowing them to steel themselves emotionally for the dangers ahead. Orpheus internalizes the importance of the present, committing to memorize every detail of their interaction as a lasting memory in case the mission proves fatal. The chapter emphasizes preparation, emotional connection, and the stakes of their endeavor, underscoring Orpheus and Irene's bond as they ready themselves for confrontation with the palace and its defenses. Epilogue: Aramis, Rihanna, and Irene arrive at Elijah's townhouse amidst a violent storm, navigating rooftops and emergency staircases to maintain secrecy. Rihanna asserts her power, declaring she has shadows to defend herself, while Aramis maintains control and ensures their safety. Inside the townhouse, they encounter Nox Aladius, Rihanna's father, unexpectedly present. He reveals a letter from Elijah Gladys offering 1 million gold marks for information on the Aetherwalker and mocks Rihanna, triggering her anger. Aramis positions himself protectively, raising his pistol as Nox taunts them, referencing past torments and testing their resilience. The tension escalates as Nox threatens with a gun, and supernatural forces, including unseen protectors, appear to intervene. In the ensuing chaos, a gunshot strikes and Aramis collapses to the floor. Shadows envelop the room, leaving the outcome uncertain. The chapter underscores the constant danger surrounding the protagonist, the tension between familial and external threats, and the precarious balance of power in their mission.